the Reed and Christine Halliday Executive Lecture Series. We're grateful to have you here today, and I'm always grateful when the speaker shows up. Curtis, it's great to have you here today. Today we had the privilege of hearing from Curtis Woodbury, who serves as the secretary to the Woodbury Corporation and sits on its board of directors. Woodbury Corporation, as you may know, is a commercial and real estate development and management company with properties in 16 states. Some of you have probably attended a Woodbury property relatively near here. I'll let you share that, Curtis. Okay. He is also president of the Woodbury Group, a Woodbury treasury management company. Curtis performs a number of asset management tasks and assists with underwriting and development of new real estate portfolios. He also oversees the Woodbury Senior Housing Project, which he's offered me a good deal on already. I'm sorry to say he would think about that. He graduated magna cum laude from Brigham Young University with a BS in, what do you think? You think business management, so would I. In jazz studies. Who said jazz? Oh, guy, he knew. Who is that masked man? How do you know that?
I just looked him up on LinkedIn.
There you go. With a bachelor's in jazz studies and received his master's in business, so then he became corrupted or educated or whatever, with honors from Brigham Young University. He's a member of the Association for Financial Professionals and also a licensed certified treasury professional. Curtis is still active in the state music scene as a violinist and a saxophonist. I wondered what it is he does. And he said he'd play for any of your weddings for free. Isn't that what he said, guys? Something similar to that. But he still plays the sax and violin. He enjoys it. He's a big sports fan, no doubt no more than UVU basketball, and enjoys spending any free time with his wife and children. Are you free to come up, or does Matty need you for something?
No, that's
Let's
great.
join Curtis. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right, I've been asked to use this microphone for those remotely as well, so hopefully that works and you can hear. I'll try not to stray too far. I do like walking around a little bit, but if I need to hold still, I can do that too. So, wow, that was quite the introduction. Thanks, Tom. Tom's one of my favorite people in the world. He's just great, and I hope you get the chance to interact with him some as part of this course. Perfect. So, without further ado, I'll introduce a little bit about myself. I want you guys to think mostly about your current situation now. I thought back as I got asked to do this, it was a little intimidating. I didn't know if I really had the credentials that a lot of the people that I've seen that have done this executive lecture series in the past have. And wanted to think back. So it was just a little over 10 years ago that I felt like I was in the shoes that a lot of you may be in, just finishing my undergraduate degree, kind of wondering what I wanted to do in life. So I first want to introduce the things that I am not along with that. I'm not some C-suite executive for a Fortune 500 company are going to be that. I'm not some entrepreneur that's going to make millions with their latest business idea and become just handsomely rich beyond belief. I'm not also the guy that's just, grinding 80 to 100 hours a week at their job, just doing anything they can to get on top. That's really good, a really good thing for your career if you want to do it. You may suffer in some other areas of your life, but that's just something that I've never really had the passion to do. I'm also not some rich and famous celebrity that's about to go for political office. So I'm sure you'll have some of those that fit some of these descriptions later on in your course. And so they can tell you how to be those things. I'm not going to try to tell you how to be that because I honestly don't even really know. I'll tell you what I am though. Did we lose the... Oh, there we go. It's back. Okay. I am fairly diligent. What I do, I've tried to work hard, and I did turn that uncertain future in jazz studies, though I am a little worried that people were looking at my LinkedIn profile. I admit I haven't looked at my own LinkedIn profile in about 10 years, so it may not be everything that I hope it is, but I did turn that into a rewarding career, had to overcome some obstacles to get there, which we'll talk about today. I have 4 children that I love and a beautiful wife, and so grateful for them every day and the time that I get to spend with them. I live a very varied lifestyle. Definitely a hobbyist, love a lot of different things, particularly still staying involved in music. And so that's who I am, and want to talk today a little bit about some of the things that I've learned since I was sitting in seats just like this. I was up a little bit further east of here, sitting in big auditoriums, listening to lectures just like this, and trying to think of what I would have wanted to hear. And so I hope you're able to apply some of these things to your current situation and think, okay, obviously my situation is very different than Mr. Woodbury's situation, but I can apply this lesson and these tools that he was thinking through to my own situation. One quote I like from a religious leader that I followed growing up was from Gordon B. Hinckley, when he said, "The world will pay you what it thinks you are worth, and your worth will increase as you gain education in your chosen field and experience." I found that to really be true. Organizations, sometimes we get the feeling that like, oh, they're out to get their workers and they're not doing everything that they can to pay everybody what they're due and they're fair. But I've found that most organizations tend to behave fairly rationally. And if you're worth a lot to that organization, they'll eventually come around and pay it to you because it'll provide that value. And if you're not, they won't. And so I think the most concise path to really getting an increase in compensation later is to find an organization first where you can become invaluable to them. So some of the things you might consider are, hey, what proficiencies do I have and are those valued by my current employer? And really, how replaceable am I? You'll be thinking of this. Some of you may have jobs right now where you're thinking of that, but just know that there's a whole new class of an auditorium of UVU students that are graduating every year, right? And saying, okay, they're going to come in and do a little self-reflection, say, could those new students replace what I'm doing? Or am I developing some unique skills and things that make me difficult to replace for an employer? If you are difficult to replace, you have really high bargaining power. And I've seen this over and over where people are able to negotiate much higher salaries, better work terms, all those types of things, because the organization doesn't want to lose their skills and the things that they provide. If you are easily replaceable, you're more at their mercy. They may not want to hire somebody else and go through that whole process, but you're likely not going to be able to drive as much power at the negotiating table if that's the case. So, if the PowerPoint comes back on here. So I want to go into my situation a little bit back in 2011 when I was just finishing my undergraduate degree. I was married. I got married a lot earlier than I was thinking I was going to, and we had just had our first child. And my wife had finished her degree in dietetics and done an internship and was making about $60,000 a year, but still wanted to work, but was thinking of cutting back to part-time now that we had a kid. She was on maternity leave at the time when I graduated, but we're trying to think of kind of our next steps in life. And so she was working, she was enjoying her job, but wanted to let me explore my career, and was nice enough to do that. So thanks for your help, Nelson. I'm not sure why it's cutting out, but I had some success as a musician at BYU. I went on 5 international tours with a bunch of different groups there. And I had released a debut album. I play the violin and the saxophone, kind of a random combination. I started out as a classical violin major, switched to jazz just because I love jazz music. Released an album in jazz, sent it out to a bunch of radio stations, and actually hit the jazz radio charts, which I didn't even know was a thing, but hit the top 50. And so I was feeling pretty good about myself at that point. Now, how many people listen to jazz radio here? I'm guessing not a lot, so it didn't mean that much, right? But I was still excited about it. Let's see, now my clicker's not moving forward.
Would you like us to bring you a musical instrument while the
Yeah.
Tell us about improvisational skills.
Yeah, right? Exactly. When we get there. I did this presentation a little while ago, and I'm honestly trying to remember what comes next. I kind of need these visual cues, but I did have to learn to improvise. That was something that, so I started the violin when I was 4, and I learned to play classical music, and that was the thing that I did. And I had a teacher when I was in the 8th grade that was like, hey, you've got to learn this jazz thing and learn to improvise. And for 2 years, it was just miserable because I was so used to having the notes on the page, and you read the notes and you play the notes on the page and you're good to go. But once I was able to kind of create my own music on the fly, which is kind of the main component, I feel like, of jazz music, that was really fun because then I didn't have to spend a lot of time learning new songs or anything like that. I could just pick up and play anywhere at any time. And so it was a good skill to learn, something that I've been able to apply in other areas. But it is still nice to occasionally have that guidance from a presentation or something else as you're going along. But
I think we can show you your next slide. If you want to step back, you can at least see what's coming up for this.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I don't.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, let me just look through go there. Perfect. Oh yeah. Okay. So I still didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life back in 2011. I know you're supposed to know exactly what you're doing, at least by your sophomore, junior year, right? And then you go through and you take all your upper graduate level courses and you go into your field of choice and you're golden. But for some people, it doesn't work out quite that simply. You take a lot of different courses, kind of see what interests you start having. But I was still exploring a variety of potential careers when I graduated at the end of 2010, going into 2011. And so I ended up taking a position at the family real estate business. Thanks, perfect. I accepted a position at the family real estate business that I knew some about. I'd worked a couple summers there. I honestly didn't know that much about it. I knew that when I was at BYU that they ran the University Mall at that time, now University Place. I knew a few things. I knew my dad did hotels. He had several hotels around, including the Hampton Inn and Suites that's kind of across from campus here. But I honestly didn't know tons about the business, but it was something that I felt like I needed to explore because it was something that my great-grandfather had founded and a lot of people had done. It was a little bit tough to have the conversation with my wife when she was making $60,000 a year. My offer was for $30,000 a year starting out. Now, this was 11 years ago. There has been some inflation, but there hasn't been that much inflation. I think this was indicative of the fact that I had a degree in jazz music, didn't really know what I was doing, exploring other career paths, but I just needed to learn. And so the CEO, his name was Rick Woodbury at the time, offered to take me around and let me shadow him, and I'd just do odd jobs for him as we go, just to try to kind of learn the business and what was there. So I thought, okay, well, I'll sign up for this and see how it goes. A month in, it's still not working, but I'll do it from here. Oh, there we go. So I get 1 month in, and the CEO actually gets a church mission call and says that he doesn't have time for me anymore. And so I get assigned a new supervisor. And this new supervisor, everybody at the company's scrambling at this point because the CEO is about to leave and they're trying to get ready. And so he just gives me a business issue that he's been facing that's been taking a lot of time, and just tells me, hey, try not to bug me until after you figure this out. Just do whatever it takes and figure out how we can fix this in the future. So I thought, okay, here's a good chance to prove myself, and I'll do it. So kind of a summary of the business issue we had was, I'll summarize it here. So this is a small snippet of my grandfather's estate. This is one branch off the tree of real estate ownership that he has. And so you can see over at the left, there's an entity called Conlau. It's a limited partnership, and it has investments in a few different entities, some of which you can see here, which then have investments in other entities, which then have investments in other entities and other entities and other entities on down. And sometimes 7 to 8 layers deep until you finally actually get to the green entities, which have real estate. But some of those green entities that actually have physical real estate also have investments in other entities that have real estate. And anyway, it becomes a real tangled mess real fast. And so every time at the company that there was a question of, okay, what people, individual people actually own this property? Or vice versa, we have this owner and we need to know what percentage he has in each of these real estate projects. Was like a day-long project, because it was like you had to go and be like, okay, it's 4% of this entity times 20% of that entity times 30% of this entity, all the way on down the thing. You build out this whole big tree and figure it out. And he said, we've got to figure out a better way to do this so that you can just like type in whatever project you want to know about and have it pop up on the screen with the answer. And so we know who actually owns this stuff. So I got this assignment and thought, okay, great, I'll start on this. I'll start working on it. I started gathering all the information that I needed on the tax department had some information on who owned what in each entity that was in Microsoft Excel already. And so I thought, hey, maybe I can use that and start to calculate it. But I got a couple days in after gathering all that data and just staring blankly at my computer screen, wondering how on earth I was going to figure out how to do this. I was wondering if I was being set up to fail, if it was even possible to just quickly be able to go like, oh yeah, this is the ownership here. Started thinking, why am I working full time? My wife could make double what I'm making. It's probably time for me to learn how to be a stay-at-home father, which was terrifying because I can't cook, I'm a terrible cleaner, I'm really not that great at watching kids all day. I get tired easily, and I was just like, man, this is probably my lot in life if I can't figure out how to do stuff like this. I was thinking back to my training, and I was like, wow, thanks, professors. I appreciate all that critique on my paper on Charlie Parker, a famous jazz musician. That's really coming in handy right now as I'm trying to figure out this work assignment. And then also wondering, my family gave me this opportunity. I've got to take advantage, but how soon is too soon to quit after a new job? Like, I just don't know if I'm cut out for this. This is really tough stuff. So I, of course, expressed these things to my wife and the frustrations and that she better get ready to go back to work full time. And she talked me off the cliff and told me to really give this the old college try a little bit more. And so started thinking through a few ideas. I knew Excel seemed like it would be a good tool for this. And I had a little bit of background in Excel. It wasn't really from school or anything, but I love to play fantasy football and fantasy basketball. And I would make my own rankings and put them in Excel. So I at least had some cursory experience. It's nothing like you're getting here at the Woodbury School of Business at UVU, but I at least had a little bit. So I thought, I just need to learn how to use this program better. So I found a YouTube channel at that time that was called Excel is Fun, and they had a whole bunch of just training videos on how to do different aspects of Excel. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll start watching some of these, and I got a thing that let me play them on double speed so I could get through more videos faster, and it's like just started cranking through any sort of how-to video that I thought could help with this assignment. I found one on sum ifs, and I'm like, oh, maybe I could use that formula, and started thinking through this. But when it came right down to it, I tried about 10 times over a week and a half to build something and completely failed every time. I thought I'd get partway there, it would work for one entity, wouldn't work for another entity. And it wasn't quite the 1,000 attempts that Thomas Edison took of the light bulb, but it felt that way to me. It just felt like an eternity that I was working on this assignment and just had no answers. But I was lying in bed on the Thursday night before Friday, and it just came to me. It's like, oh, I think if I set it up this way and this thing and have this tab go to this thing, I think I could do this. And it kind of came to me. I was super excited. I got up super early the next morning, went into work, and sure enough, it worked. I was able to create a tool to go both ways that very day, where I could plug in a number, an identification number for a property, and it would spit out who owned the property, the individuals, or I could plug in a number for an owner, and it would spit out all the properties they owned and which percentage. And I was so excited, and so was my supervisor. It was just so thrilled when I came in with that, and I got some respect. I was like, yes, I accomplished something difficult, didn't have a lot of guidance, and he gave me another similar task that I needed to work on. So learned some important stuff from this. There was a clear need in my organization at that time that I was working for people who could leverage that type of technology like Excel to solve these business questions and problems. Now, obviously, I didn't have much training in this, right? There would have been lots of other people who could have solved that problem way faster than I did. But there weren't any, at least that had time, at my organization that could do it. And so that was a need that I identified that I felt that I could hit. I had been, developing creativity and sharpening my mind doing music for so many years prior. And I'd really become an effective self-learner. I'd had to teach myself so much stuff that it's like, hey, I can do these how-to videos on YouTube and learn all this stuff, and I can do it on my own. So I felt that was my quickest path forward to being a contributor to the organization. And so I worked hard at that there. So I'm gonna pivot, we'll continue with the story shortly, but I wanna pivot into a model that I find really helpful for trying to figure out what you wanna do with your life and how you can have a successful career in doing it. This is called the COP model from Kurt Sandholz. C stands for competence, and that's basically what are the things that you do well. I think it's important to identify this while you're in school. Figure out stuff that you're good at. Also ask your classmates, your teachers, others for feedback, because sometimes you don't even realize the things that you're good at. Or sometimes you may think you're really good at something and somebody else can put you in the right place. So identifying your competencies, very important. Opportunity in this context is, what can I get paid to do, right? Is there a demand for my service out in the open market? Is that something that I can help address in the world and be paid for that, and so I can turn it into a career. And the last thing is passion. What work do I enjoy? Those types of things. And hopefully you're finding some of these passions as well as opportunities, as you have different interviews on campus or different classes, the topics that interest you, the things that you want to do. Most of the time, at least for me, I usually only have maybe one of these or zero of these for most things that I would consider for a career. But there are a few things in each category where I had two. I had two of these, but not the third, and was trying to decide if this was a good career choice for me. So I'm going to go through several different kind of careers that I considered as I was finishing school and going in, and kind of how I look at it through this model. So the first one is stuff that you have competence and opportunity in, but you don't really have a passion for. All right, now I actually know plenty of people that have found a career that just have these two things and they can get by. Maybe they have passions from other parts of their life that kind of keep them going, enjoy spending time with family. It's not ideal. They're generally not as happy as the people that find something they can work in that they're passionate about. But some of the things that were this way for me, so one was teaching music. I thought this was going to be a great chance for me. Shortly after graduating, the professor of saxophone at Brigham Young University took a sabbatical and asked me to take over all his students. And so I did that for a semester, and it was really rewarding to see people improve and teach so many students and have some great experiences and great perspectives. I would come home at the end of the day, though, I was tired. It was really frustrating to try to plant into their brains the things that I had in mind. I was trying to, help them along, and some did better than others. And I realized that that's one of the best areas if you're a jazz musician to actually make money, because there's so many students at every middle school, right, and high school that are learning how to play and need somebody to kind of teach them how to. That would have been a great way for me to make a career in music. but I just didn't find it as satisfying. It was tough work that I wasn't enjoying. It really was more of a chore. I just never really developed the passion for it, and so I decided to move elsewhere. Another thing that I was positive I was going to do, follow in my father's footsteps, along with a ton of other people that I knew, and go to law school. I took the LSAT while I was still a senior in my undergrad. I barely studied for it, and I did pretty well. I got in the 97th percentile, which for not studying, I was like, holy cow, like I'm gonna be good at this law school thing. I'm gonna have to do this for sure. And so I was positive that I was gonna go to law school. Did a little bit of legal work while I was working at Woodbury, and just wiped my brow and said, crisis averted. I don't want to be associated with that type of work. I don't want anything to do with it. That is not the kind of thing I want to be doing with my life. So I may have had a competence in it. My brain worked in a certain way that law school, I was a decent writer from doing more humanities stuff and the logic games and everything. My brain worked really well to be a lawyer, but it's not the work that I wanted to do. And so I moved elsewhere. Hopefully you can identify some of these things that fit these categories for you as you go along. All right, the next group is when you have competence in something and a passion for it, but there's not much opportunity to make at least good money in it. That's a hobby. And I just want to point out that hobbies are not a bad thing. Hobbies are a great thing. They just don't always make a great job. Okay, so some of the things that I was really excited about was performing. I really enjoyed performing. I enjoyed recording my album and going out and playing. I have some friends that were very successful and had lots of opportunity in performance. A few of my friends moved down to Las Vegas and formed a band called Imagine Dragons that did all right. They're making pretty good money. I played on the debut album before they signed a record deal of Neon Trees. They made some pretty good money in music. These people were doing great performing. But the kind of music that I really loved, especially, I love classical and some other styles too, but jazz was really my passion. And there just isn't that big of a market for it. It's out there, but you can go to New York City, for example, and hear some of the best jazz musicians in the world playing at bars for 20 people for 4 hours in a night. And it's just, that's not the same type of concert venue you're gonna see Post Malone at or something, right? It's just a different audience, and it's not as marketable. And so I just quickly realized there's a lot more people that wanted to perform in jazz music than there were fans out there that were gonna pay for it. And so I pivoted early on. I was doing more time performing. I pivoted early on, and now it's my favorite hobby. I still do it very regularly, and I play, but I'm not worried about living from gig to gig and getting by with money. It's just become my favorite hobby instead of my job. The other one I mentioned earlier is I really love fantasy football. I have a projection system that people keep telling me I need to sell, but again, there are so many people that want to work in the fantasy sports industry because it's fun, you get to watch sports and do all this. And I've always felt like the market for people who want to pay for that analysis is so much smaller than the market of people who want to work in that industry. It's more of a hobby to me. So I just do it for fun. I put together all my analysis and put it there for our $10 buy-in leagues at work and stuff like that, and spend hours and hours and hours getting it. But it's something that I enjoy. But I prefer keeping it as a hobby rather than as a job, because I think it would be really difficult to monetize. Last kind of grouping of categories I want to talk about here is when you have opportunity to make money, and you have a passion for something, but you don't really have any competence in that area. And that's what I describe as kind of being a rookie. You're a rookie in that field. So the first one I really explored with this was in the field of music as well, but it was in music instrument manufacturing. So I was toured around by Cannonball Musical Instruments. They are a saxophone and other woodwind instrument, some brass as well now too, manufacturer based out of Sandy, Utah. And they brought me in for a lengthy interview, met with their team for about 2 hours. I was good friends with most of the employees already. They They had a great work-life balance and a whole bunch of great things going for them. They were making saxophones, shipping them all over the country. They were excited about potentially bringing me on and having me add a strings line, since I played the violin as well, to their company. There was a lot of really good things going for that. Had a good interview with them, but at the end of the day, there was a very mechanical aspect to this job where you had to be able to go in and take a saxophone that was coming off the assembly line and tune it up, and make certain adjustments here and there to make it so that the saxophone was sounding really good before it went out to music stores to be sold to potential students. And I don't have a competence in any sort of mechanical type thing. In fact, just the other day, I spent about 20 minutes trying to get this key fob onto this keychain. And I was just having such a struggle to do that. Eventually my wife came around. I said, "Hey, hon, can you help me with this?" And of course, 10 seconds later, it's done. She gives it to me. And people think it's completely ridiculous when I say stuff like that, but I really just I don't know if it's a mental block or I just don't have the ability, but I can't fix anything. If anything ever goes wrong, I have to call somebody or ask my wife to do it, because I am the least handy person I've ever met. And so I didn't think it was going to be a really good fit for me to do this. Now, could I have developed competence in this field? Maybe, but sometimes there's things that we're just naturally better at than others. So even though I found this opportunity really exciting and there'd be a lot of business and music aspects to it, two areas that I really enjoyed, I just determined that it probably wasn't my best career fit. So the last area that I really explored was more in the real estate finance, Excel. It wasn't even real estate as much. That I ended up in real estate because that's what the family did, and ended up really loving it because, I like stocks and bonds and that kind of stuff, but every single piece of dirt out there is different, and there's so much analysis that goes into that. I really love doing that, learning how to model in Excel and figure out, all the different opportunities that come through real estate. And it was something that I didn't know how to do at all when I was finishing school, right? But there's a demand in the world for that service. And I had a passion for the numbers and the things that came with it. And so I developed those competencies, particularly after school, and really turned it into a career. So throwing all these things together, you can kind of see how it looks. We really want to find that middle spot, right? The intersection of the three circles, I think, would be your most successful careers if you can find something there. You can see it's probably a good idea to say no when you don't love what you do, but you do it well and can be paid to do it. You've got to figure out how to monetize your hobby if you want to turn it into a job, right? And you need to learn to do whatever you're doing better if you're a rookie in whatever area you're doing. And so you may want to consider your own, competencies, opportunities, and passions as you go through this. Kind of put it through this model in your mind and be like, okay, where is a good fit? Where could I potentially end up in the middle of these three circles? And that'll turn into a much more rewarding career for you. So I'll just give a quick update on the last 10 years since 2011 when I first started there. I identified, I was mostly doing Excel analysis for a little over a year, but I identified several areas that were kind of shortcomings within the organization, things where I felt that I could potentially develop the skill set to contribute more. And I went and got an M.B.A. to fast track my growth in several of those areas. I took a lot of online courses. I'm a black hole badge member of Khan Academy, which is just crazy the amount of time that I spent on that website just learning new things. But I got to business school and I just breezed through it. A lot of it was a review because I was able to find the subjects online before and learn a lot of it. And so I was just able to kind of augment and just cover any foundational gaps that I'd missed in the meantime there. And then I really wanted to make sure to take classes to develop skills in areas where I knew we didn't have that skill within my organization. Most people go to get an M.B.A. so they can switch careers. Mine was a little different where I was like, I really like working at Woodbury and I want to do this, but there are some skills that I need to develop. And so took a class in IT called Advanced Database Management that absolutely kicked my fanny. It was my toughest class there because there were like 3 prerequisites for it and I hadn't taken any of them. And so just go there, but I learned how to do databases, and I used that every single day in my job. There were so many courses like that where I went and took courses over in the law school and courses in other buildings. They let me have a lot of flexibility to do that, and I was able to develop a lot of wide-ranging skills in unique areas, which combination makes it so that I'm much more difficult to replace at my organization. And I think that's given me good job security, and to the point where I do now make more than $30,000 a year. So I'm really excited to report on my success on that front. So, but I had to become worth that, right? Your organization's generally going to pay you what it thinks you're worth. And at first, I was just essentially an intern, right? I didn't know what I wanted to do. They didn't know what I was good at, all those types of things. But once you can combine those unique skills, that's there. So really good things to think about are, what are these unique skills that you can develop while you're still here at school, right? What are some of the classes I can take that can separate me from just anybody that's coming in with a bachelor's degree? So I'll turn the time over now to questions and answers. There's a little picture when it comes back on the screen of my family, my 4 young kids and my wife, and they mean everything to me. And I'm really grateful I was able to find a career where I still get to see my kids grow up, but still feel that I've had good success and a lot of fulfillment that's come through that. So.
Q&A, questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Terry, in the back there. Yeah, that's you.
All right. So this is not business, but cannonballs are great, but they're expensive. What do you think would be the best starter sacks for college students?
That's a good question. So this may have a personal thing. We're trying to figure out which saxophone to purchase if you're on a college budget. Is that fair to say that Cannonball may be on the more expensive side? I haven't checked their prices recently, but the big selling point for Cannonball I still have my Cannonball, was that they're actually about $1,000 cheaper than the nice models of Selmer and Yamaha and some of the nicer. So there's not there. The one thing I'll say about saxophone though is that your mouthpiece actually matters more than your actual saxophone as far as how good you'll sound. And so you can probably find some off-brand saxophone and get by for a while if you can get a good mouthpiece to go on it. So that's my piece of advice.
I'm glad 2 people understood that. I have a question that maybe 10 or 20.
Yeah, there we go.
So
Let's hear it here.
In your M.B.A, what did you focus on specifically?
Yeah, so he asked in my M.B.A. what I focused on specifically. So I was on basically the finance track there. I knew I liked numbers and I liked Excel, but some of the courses I took a course on Visual Basic for applications, the back-end language for Microsoft Office products. And I still use that a ton, especially coming right out of school. I used it a ton, built a ton of tools for our organization using all that back-end stuff. It still makes my work so much more efficient. Took courses in private equity, which is something that we do at our business. Modeling, those types of things, real estate finance, advanced corporate finance. Those were all the types of courses that I was really going for. And a lot of people were there at school just to get the initials after the name, I feel like, and weren't taking classes super seriously. But in Canvas in the learning suite for each course, I don't know if it's like this at UVU, but they'd have the grade distribution for each class, and they'd show the bars for how many people had each percentage, and then they'd have an arrow that pointed up to where you were. And I was very competitive, and so I was trying to get number 1 in every one of my classes. So that's what I focused on. I really just wanted to learn the material as well as I could. So I took as many things that were, again, that database class, I was nowhere near the top of my class because it was kicking my butt just to pass it. But I did everything I could, right, to learn those unique skills and become expert in those in the year and a half or so I was doing graduate school. Yeah, Tom.
A question from someone watching on Teams today.
Perfect.
Have you had a situation where you thought you could be good at something, but were put in your place?
Yes, the question is, have I had a situation where I thought I could be good at something and be put in my place? I feel like that's pretty much every day as a father that my kids tell me that. That's a thing. Let's see, it's a good question. I kind of put myself in my own place a lot of times for the cannonball music type stuff. One situation that ended up being real hard for me is actually when I went and served a church mission in Spain. That kicked my behind. I am an introvert, and being out on the street all day, talking to people in a foreign language for 14 hours a day was just completely exhausting to me. And I eventually worked through it, but there was 6 months or so there where I was struggling harder than I ever had in my life. That was a really tough experience. And so I don't know if that's the perfect thing, but you can find yourself in a career where maybe you're like that. You can tell it's not the greatest fit. And I knew that wasn't my greatest fit, but I wanted to make it my 2 years. And so I was gonna power through it. But that was a time that I got kind of knocked on my backside, if that makes sense. So. Yeah, question here.
Towards the beginning of your career at Woodbury, when you kind of felt that incompetent, what got you through that?
Yeah, the question is what got me through the feelings of incompetence early on at Woodbury. I would say support from family for sure got me through that. And once I could kind of identify that I was getting better, I feel like that really helped. Because it's one thing to feel like you're not good at something, but you're learning it. And it's a whole nother thing to think, man, I'm never gonna be good at this. And so initially I thought, oh, I'm never gonna be good at this. But once I started to have a few successes and get through, it gave me all the more motivation to keep watching those training videos, to keep learning more and more, and so I could become better at what I was doing. So.
Curtis, you said supportive family, but you treat non-Woodbury's with that same type of support. I mean, as an employer, you need to support people, and as an employee, you should expect that kind of support, right? Absolutely. You need to make sure your employer is doing their job, and then you make sure you're doing your job as an employee, and it's a mutual benefit for everybody there. That's really true. And though I do work at the family business, as I mentioned, there's about 25 of us family there, and we have about 175 in the corporate office and about 900 with property management and everything there. So we make up a very small percentage of that organization. And it's actually been really fun to see. I call myself the first analyst, the first financial analyst that really worked at Woodbury. I kind of created that role, and I've now got a department of about 10 of those people that are just crunching numbers on different real estate scenarios and everything that's going through there. So it's been fun to see that growth in the last 11 years. So, yeah, question over here.
Do you have any kind of role models that you kind of looked up to in your developing your education and your career?
Yeah, that's a really good question about role models. I've had a lot of role models from public sources. One that I really looked up to growing up was a saxophone player named Joshua Redman. His dad was a saxophone player, so he learned to play the saxophone. He was very good at it, but he decided that he wanted to have a different career. He applied and got into Harvard Law, and was just finishing his degree with a 4.0 at Harvard Law School. Incredibly smart guy. And tried out for a jazz competition called the Thelonious Monk Competition and won it, and it included a record deal. And he scrapped his Harvard Law degree and went into being a musician full time. And he's made a very successful career of that. So I look up to guys that accomplish really great things like that. I like to look into their history and what they do. But if I'm going to be completely honest, and I'm not just saying that because he's here, but all my life, I looked up to my dad, and I just felt like I was never going to be able to live up to what he did. He's super great with people. He's super successful. He's great in all he did. And so my dad's definitely my role model, but it is good to have a few others as well. So, yeah, question.
So in the model that you built to suggest us how to choose our career is combine all three items, right?
That's correct.
Normally, who can find the middle place is pretty fortunate, it's pretty lucky. Which two items to combine you're going to suggest that if we can't stand or we can't find the middle ground for now?
Great question. All right, so he's asking, hey, this COP model, yeah, obviously you want to target somewhere in the middle, right? Where you have competency, opportunity, and passion, but sometimes you can't find either. Can't find all three. And if you were choosing, what do you want? And the question to me is really just, what are your priorities in life? So if your priority or making money, you don't care as much about being happy at your job necessarily, and you're just going to live a good life outside your job, you could probably live without the passion portion of it, right? I know plenty of people in work that do that. I also, as a musician, know tons of people that have competence and passion in music and are basically living on the street because there's very little money-making opportunity. I have one real good friend that moved down to Vegas during COVID because it was the only place he could think of where there'd be people that would pay him to play it on the street, so he could at least get some income, because all that gig income for them when COVID hit just went completely gone, and some of them were just living from gig to gig. And so anyway, that's one that's there. And then it's a little tougher on the rookie side, but you can end up in professions too where you're not very good at something, but there's still an opportunity to do it. You're just always going to feel like you're not very good at your job, which can be frustrating too. And so it really is nice if you can combine all three. I've realized that that's not going to be a reality for everybody. I want you to try to make that your reality, but if you can't, then you kind of have to start making decisions on what matters most to you. So
Maybe one more, right here.
one more, perfect.
What's the line between realizing that you're not good at something or thinking that you can learn it and just keep working hard at it? Like, how far into that do you go until you move on?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a very introspective one to finish with is, where do you draw the line from competence, where it's like, I'm going to be able to develop this skill and be really good at it, versus, this probably just isn't for me. I'm probably not the best person at doing this. And it's tough. It's tough to draw that line. It's a really good question. You see that I did it. It's a little more obvious for somebody who can't even put a key on a keychain that they're not going to be very good at fixing stuff. But sometimes it's a lot less clear than that, right? And I would say that the financial modeling aspect for me, I wasn't completely clear on at first. And it took me getting into it and doing it, and having some successes and continuing to learn to the point where I could be like, yeah, I could be really good at this. And so hopefully you're starting to figure some of that stuff out in your classes, as you're like, maybe at first this subject was tough for you, but you're starting to get the hang of it and getting a lot better. So some of this stuff you'll probably just have to figure out on the job as well. So
Thanks for coming.
Hey, thank you all for coming. Sure appreciate it.